Hi everyone. To say the truth, I have about 200 videos in my channel. But this video today will be one of the most important videos ever in my channel. You know why? Because I will share with you an exclusive information about how to repair any failed or dead laptop motherboard. The information that I will be sharing with you today, I'm sure you will not find like this information in the internet. So if you finish this video, I'm sure that you will be able to fix any failed laptop motherboard. So let's get started. So here, as you can see, we're gonna see an incredible and amazing article that will transform you from beginner to professional in laptop motherboard repair. So let's get started. So this is the topics that we're gonna discuss in this course one by one. The first title, what is a dead motherboard? The second, what is the cause of dead laptop motherboards? Third, how to check laptop motherboard visually without multimeter. So in this point, guys, many of technicians don't know to check visually. The most or the first step that you should begin with when you troubleshoot or you want to diagnose any motherboard, you should begin with visual inspection. Because using just visual inspection, you can spot or you can detect the failed component, a blown component or a burned component without doing measurement, etc. And you will gain the time. Okay, so how to check laptop motherboard visually without multimeter. Then how to diagnose a dead laptop motherboard. How to check for a short circuit in the motherboard. How to check motherboard ports and connectors. How to check laptop motherboard power jack serviceability. How to check motherboard power circuit and components serviceability, laptop motherboard chips and integrated circuits, how to check super input-output IC integrated circuit, SIO or super input-output and its circuit, how to check basic input-output system integrated circuit or BIOS, how to test fuses using a digital multimeter, how to test inductors using a digital multimeter, how to test capacitor using a digital multimeter, then how to test diode, how to test MOSFETs, ICs and motherboard chips using a digital multimeter, how to check SMD components or surface mounted devices and also THT component or through hole technology devices on a laptop motherboard. Then how to check motherboard connector serviceability, and finally how to use the multimeter in the correct way, and much more. So let's go directly to the first one. What is a dead motherboard? So a dead laptop motherboard is a 100 failed motherboard that cannot be powered on even if you press the power button. Okay, even if you press the power button, nothing happens. So when you plug the adapter and press the power button and you got no response and no LED was eliminated, okay, means the laptop is dead. For example, here we have the adapter. You plug the power adapter, then power on switch is pressed, the laptop won't turn on, no response and no light on laptop LEDs, means automatically the status dead motherboard or dead laptop. This kind of issues is always due to power problem, not data problem. We're gonna speak about data problem on other video, but here did laptop motherboard is always, not usually, always due to power problems. So second, what is the cause of dead laptop motherboard? So there are many reasons that can cause a dead laptop motherboard. The first, short circuit. The short circuit is the frequent fault that can cause a dead laptop motherboard. For example, here we have a short circuit. This is an IC. You can create the short circuit yourself by, for example, if you want, for example, to test an IC using the multimeter, you put the probe of the multimeter on IC directly, and if you shunt or touch two pins together, you will create a short circuit. So the short circuit always means when you connect between a power rail and the ground. You can use a short circuit. Then the motherboard will be a dead motherboard. Like this picture, as you can see, we have the short circuit. So second cause, we have a failed power jack. This is the power jack. So also can cause dead motherboard failure due to dry soldering or broken pins inside the power jack. Okay, you know the power jack? Here, these pins, if there is a dry soldering, means the pins are not connected to the motherboard, or broken pins inside the power jack. So the motherboard can stop working definitely. This failure is one of the common failures that can cause a dead laptop motherboard. So let's now move on to the third cause that can cause a dead laptop motherboard: a blown fuse near the power jack. Within the charge IC circuit can cause also a dead motherboard because these fuses are made for protection. Okay, so blown SMD fuses means the surface mounted device fuses. So pictures below shows the component that can cause dead motherboard failure. Here, as you can see, this is two pictures. Okay, this is the power jack over here. This is the power jack. Okay, or the DC jack. Okay, then here the 19 volt will pass directly here to this inductor. This is inductor, but sometimes you can find here a fuse. Okay, now this is inductor because we have here L, but the reference of fuse is F. Okay, so these two components here can cause a dead motherboard because the power cannot pass here to other circuits in the motherboard. Here also, as you can see, we have a power jack over here, and over here we have two inductors. So if one of these inductors is failed, you can get a dead motherboard. Okay, so the components that can cause dead motherboard failure, you can find inductor like this and this, double inductor, fuse, MOSFET, double MOSFET, fuse resistor, and diode. Okay, so basically this is usually this component are the cause of a dead motherboard. Okay, so sometimes instead of the fuse you can find one or more inductors that have the same purpose as the fuse: protection of other circuits in the motherboard. You can also find one MOSFET or two MOSFET switches. Okay, we call this MOSFET switches because they switch the state. Okay, so here we have the picture, as you can see. So here we have the power jack. Over here you can see we have the power jack, we have 19 volt. Okay, and we have a MOSFET. You can find sometimes just one MOSFET. This MOSFET also has as a purpose as a switch, as you can see, or you can even find two MOSFETs. If this MOSFET is failed or these two MOSFETs are failed, the motherboard automatically will be a dead motherboard. So now let's go to cause number 4. Okay, so failed super input output SIO can cause also a failed and dead motherboard because it is the first responsible for the whole power in the motherboard. Note that you can check the serviceability of the SIO IC using 3 methods. The first method, by checking its heat. Plug the power adapter and check the Super IO body using your finger, okay? If you feel that the IC is very hot, this means it is a failed IC. The second method, by checking the ceramic capacitors or PF capacitors. We called it PF capacitors because usually its capacity is in picofarad. PF means picofarad capacitors. So by the second method, by checking the ceramic, this is the ceramic capacitors or PF capacitors near to the IC. If you find that any of that capacitor is shorted, means 100% the SIO IC is damaged. You should replace it with another one with the same reference. So as you can see over here, we have here the SIO, the Super IO, and this is ceramic capacitors around it. Okay, so when this IC is shorted or failed, these capacitors will be shorted. Okay, these capacitors will be shorted. Okay, if you find more, not just one capacitor, if you find 2 or 3 or even 4 or all capacitors are shorted, automatically the failed component is not the capacitors but the IC. Now, the third method that you can use to check the Super IO is by checking the inputs and outputs of the SIO IC using its datasheet or schematic and the multimeter. So the picture below shows the SIO in the laptop motherboard. So as you can see here, we have the Super IO. Always the Super IO is in this shape or form, as you can see. Super input output IC. Okay, we called it sometimes keyboard controller. Okay, keyboard controller. There are many types of Super IO IC. Note that the SIO is usually in square shape, as you observe in the picture below. Okay, so you can find the Super IO, many types of Super IO, as you can see. So the cause number 5 that can cause a dead laptop motherboard is what? Is basic input output system, BIOS. Okay, so failed BIOS can cause a dead computer motherboard when the firmware inside it becomes corrupted or failed. The motherboard will stop working because the BIOS is responsible for the posts or power on self test. This is the first operation that happens inside the computer. When you press the power button, the first operation that should be happen is the post or power on self test. And the BIOS is the responsible for this operation. Okay, you can find the BIOS in this two shape, this or this. This we find it usually in the desktop motherboard and this one in the laptop motherboard. So the posts or power on self test and computer booting, and the computer cannot turn on without the self test. Okay, the BIOS chip circuit diagram. 8 pins BIOS chip is the most chip used in laptop motherboards. So as you can see here, we have the BIOS circuit diagram, as you can see. So as you can see over here, so always in the pin number 8, we have the VDD. You should here find 3.3 volt always, and always pin number 4 is connected to the ground. And of course we have here the output, the write protect, we have all the input, the clock, the hold, etc. Okay, so this is the model of this BIOS. As you can see here, we have SST25LF0808. 8 here means 1 megabyte. So here I want to add a tip here. Always when you have a failed BIOS, you should always flash or program the BIOS using a flash file or a bin file with the same capacity as the BIOS. If you have an IC BIOS, an IC chip with 4 megabyte, you should use a file with 4 megabyte. If you have a BIOS chip with 8 megabyte, you should use a file with 8 megabyte. This is a rule, okay? This is a rule. I have many videos in my channel that speak about these topics. And if you want, I will create an article or another video that will show to you all about the BIOS, how to reprogram it, etc. Note, when you encounter a failed BIOS chip, corrupted firmware, you should program flash it with appropriate firmware using the BIOS program. So to program the BIOS, okay, you need first the BIOS itself, the BIOS IC, then you need a programmer. Here we have a programmer, here also we have another programmer, okay? There are many types of programmers. So the BIOS itself, the programmer, the support that will handle the BIOS, and the firmware or the software. And the firmware or the file and the software or the program that we're gonna fix or install in the computer in order to put the firmware into the BIOS chip. So the cause number 6 that can cause a dead laptop motherboard. Damaged connectors can cause also a dead motherboard. That's why you should always check the connectors when you get a dead or any other failed motherboard. Okay, you should always check these connectors. You will find many types of connectors in your laptop or computer depending on the type of your laptop. Of course, you will not find this one because this is an old connector. Also, this one you will not find it in the laptop, but maybe in computer. Now we have HDMI and a very advanced parts, but the working principle is the same. Always, if you have a dead motherboard, try to check the connectors, especially USB connectors, because if these pins inside the USB connectors is damaged or bended and touched each other, this will create a short circuit and the motherboard will be dead motherboard 100%. So the same for all connectors. That's why you should always check the connectors. Now let's move on to the next section that we're gonna discuss, how to diagnose a dead laptop motherboard. To diagnose the laptop motherboard, you should check the following parts in order: the laptop adapter, the first one, then the power jack, then the presence of plus VBAT 19 volts, about 19 volts in the motherboard. Then the 3 volt, 5 volt power system. I made a video, I don't know, yesterday or 2 days before, that explain the 3 volt, 5 volt power circuit, a very important video. A 3 volt, then you should check a 3 volt in pin number 8 of the BIOS. So if you don't find 3 volt in pin number 8 of the BIOS without switching on the laptop, if you don't find it there, means the 3 volt 5 volt is not present in the whole motherboard. If you find that all these voltages are good, then you should program the BIOS chip to solve the problem. But first, check all these steps. I will show you a secret you can use to troubleshoot the short circuit in any motherboard. The secret is the inductor. Guys, this is a very important trick that you can use in your life as a technician or engineer that work on computer, service or repair. Unfortunately, I saw many videos in YouTube. They don't know how to track and how to identify the short circuit. Guys, I can identify the short circuit in just 20 seconds. Whatever the type of the short circuit, just give me the motherboard and give me the multimeter. I can find the short circuit in just 10 seconds, 20 seconds maximum. You know why? Because I use this trick that I'm going to teach you right now, the inductor. Here we have inductor. What is the secret behind the inductor? The secret behind the inductor is that the inductor is never connected to the ground. You will never find the inductor ever that is connected to the ground in a computer motherboard. Never, ever. This is the secret behind the inductor. So we can use the inductor to detect short circuits. So because inductors or coils are never connected to the ground, we can use it to detect the short circuit in just seconds. Not hour or 2 hours, no, just seconds. I told you that the inductors can never be connected to the ground. Nice. So when you put the multimeter in the continuity option or buzzer option and you put the black probe of the multimeter in the ground and the other probe of the multimeter, I mean the red probe, try to check all inductors exists in the motherboard. When you check the inductors on the motherboard, of course you will find readings. You can find 200, 300, 500, depending in the circuit where the inductor exists. And when you check any inductor and you find a continuity, a real continuity or a buzzer with a very low resistance, 0 or 1 in the multimeter or even 2, means you detect the short circuit. But pay attention here. There are some circuit in the motherboard that has a low resistance. I mean the CPU, the chipsets. You can find 009 when you check the inductors around the CPU or around the NOT bridge. 009 or even 006. That means it's not a short circuit. That resistance is for the CPU or the NOT bridge. But when you find a very low resistance, 0 or 001, means you have a short circuit. You can do this in just 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Okay, and of course, I have a video or even 2 videos in my channel where I do a practical course about this, how to check a short circuit. I have this video in my channel, a practical video. So let's continue. So in every motherboard, the inductor or coil can never be connected to the ground. Always the inductor in the computer or laptop motherboard is connected to the power rail. So if you find any inductor that is connected to the ground, means you have a short circuit in the circuit, that the inductor belongs to it. Proof. Let's take a look at the schematics of some circuit or laptop motherboard. Here we have the 3 volt power rail, as you can see over here. So here we have the 3 volt power rail. We have the inductor. The inductor is connected always to the power rail of 3 volt. Here we have the ground. And here we have the inductor. Yes, capacitors could be connected to the ground, but not inductor. Let's see another schematic. Here we have a 5 volt power rail, as you can see. We have 5 volt here. We have the pad or the test point, and we have the inductor. Inductor is connected directly to 5 volt. And over here we have the ground. Do you see? Let's see another power rail, 1.8 volt power rail. We have inductor connected directly to 1.8 volt. And over here we have the ground. So always the inductor is connected to the power rail. Here also we have inductor, we have 1.5 volt. And over here we have the ground. So do you see? Do you understand? Now let's see another section. Over here we have how to troubleshoot the short circuit. So put the multimeter to the buzzer or continuity option and check all inductors in that motherboard. All inductors should not give to you a low resistance to the ground. If you find any inductor that is connected to the ground, means you have a short circuit. Okay, so here we have the continuity option over here. You can use the multimeter, just check or select the continuity option and put the black probe of the multimeter in the ground and use the red probe to check all inductors in your motherboard. Any inductor that gives to you a very low resistance, automatically you have the short circuit in that circuit. So now let's see how to check the serviceability of the SIO IC. As you know, the super input output IC or SIO, and sometimes we call it keyboard control. By the way, I post a video, last video is about SIO. I post a video yesterday about SIO. SIO symptoms, how to identify SIO symptoms. You can watch it in my channel. So as you know, the super IO output IC or SIO, and sometimes we call it KBC or keyboard controller. It is responsible for the whole power in the motherboard. You can check the serviceability of the SIO using many methods, but the 2 known methods are as we have already seen. First, by checking the heat of the SIO IC. If you feel that the IC is very hot, while plugging in the adapter means it is failed. The second method is by checking the ceramic capacitor around it. Okay, we already see these tips. So now let's see how to check the BIOS. The BIOS or basic input-output system is one of the most important ICs in the motherboard because it contains firmware or a program that is responsible for the post or power on self-test. The post is the first operation that should be performed before downloading the operating system. The post has as a purpose to check and make a self-test to the hardware parts before booting the computer. That's why if that firmware is corrupted, the post cannot be performed, so the laptop will not work. To check the BIOS, you should first connect the power adapter to the power jack of the laptop and then check whether you have 3.3 volt in pin number 8 of the BIOS without turning on the laptop. If you find that 3.3 volt is present, means you should program the BIOS to solve the problem. But if you do not find 3.3 volt, then you should troubleshoot it. So as you can see here, we have the BIOS pin out. As you can see, we have the first pin, we have the second pin, okay, the output, data output, and here we have 3 pins here. As you can see, this is a very important pins. We have write protect. You should find 3.3 volt. Basically, the pin number 8 is the very important pin. We have VDD or VCC here. You should always find 3.3 volt, but also you will find 3.3 volt in the pin number 3, right protect. Here we have always ground, then we have the data input, we have the clock about 1.5 volt. I remember one of my followers asked me about what is 1.5 volt in the BIOS means. I told him that 1.5 volt is for the clock. Yes, it's for the clock. And here we have the hold, input output, and here we have the VCC. So here, as you can see, in this table we have the pin name, the input output, and we have the function. So here, the first pin, chip select input. The second pin, we have data output. Right protect, as you can see, the ground, we have the data input, and we have the clock, serial clock input, the hold input, and power supply. Okay, so here basically maybe this is the last part, how to check motherboard ports and connectors. So connectors are usually dismissed by many technicians, and in general 100% many of technicians neglects and dismiss to check connectors, but it's among the frequent causes of dead motherboards. I find about 20% of motherboard I fixed, its problem is due to connectors, and the major connectors that create short circuit. If the connector is damaged or some of its pins are connected together, it can cause a short circuit. Then the motherboard will stop definitely working. That's why you should always pay attention to the connector. Okay, so thank you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this article. This is a very important article. You can go to the description box. You will find the link of this article. You can check it, take your time and read it first time, 3 times, even 5 times or 10 times, no problem. Understand it. It will change your life. Really, you will feel that you go to the next level in troubleshooting. This is a very important article. I checked all the internet. I didn't find like this article that speak about how to troubleshoot a dead motherboard. And you are very welcome in my channel, in my website, also in my Patreon page. You will find also its link in the description box, where I share schematics, many exclusive informations and unique content. And please don't forget to subscribe, to share the video with other people, and please don't forget to like the video, because you motivate me with your likes in order to create more and more videos. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.